Hi, everybody, and welcome to Accessibility in Action. My name is Eric Yarberry, and I'm the Director of Education here at World Services for the Blind. We've got a couple of people here with us today. Lee Rogers, who is our Communications Manager, Amber Moe, who is an Accessibility and Web Auditor, and Heather Miller, who is an Assistive Technology Instructor. So while you guys are hopping on Facebook and while we've got your attention, do us a favor and share share what accessibility means to you in the Facebook comments, if you don't mind. And you guys will be having a conversation in the comments, and we'll be watching those. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we can answer those. We'll be watching that as well. So to get us kicked off, we'll start with Lee. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lee Rogers. I'm the Development and Communications Manager at World Services for the Blind. I've worked at World Services for about 6 years now. And I do all of the behind the scenes work now on the website and our social media and our webinars. And a lot of that has to do with making our website and our social media accessible.
Thanks, Lee. Amber, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Moe. I am an associate auditor with Accessible 360. I've been working with them full time now since March, like the end of March. Before that, I had an internship. I basically look at websites to see if they're accessible, and if they're not, we tell the client how to make their websites more accessible, for all people with disabilities. So it's very rewarding, and I love what I do.
Awesome. And Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather Miller. I'm an assistive technology instructor working here at World Services for the Blind. I'm a program instructor for the ATI online program, and I also teach some students here on campus. I graduated from the assistive technology instructor program here at World Services, and I've been completing an internship since the middle of March.
Awesome. And we're glad to have you, Heather.
Thank you.
Lee, to get us kicked off, share a little bit about Global Accessibility Day.
Yeah, so Global Accessibility Awareness Day started just kind of on an accident in 2011. A web developer out of Los Angeles wrote a blog post about why web developers should consider accessibility, and a really prominent accessibility consultant in the field found his blog post, and they decided to team up and create this event. And it's become a really big global event with different webinars and in non-COVID times, live events. So yeah, and it's just a way to celebrate accessibility and teach people about how to make web accessible.
Awesome. So for Heather and Amber, so what we're going to do now is I would like each one of you to kind of share what you've learned while you were at World Services for the Blind. Lee was not a client here. And we'll start with Heather, since I started with you before Amber. So Heather.
Okay. All right, so I learned everything I know about assistive technology from World Services for the Blind. When I first came here back in April of 2021, I was dealing with fairly recent sight loss, and I had never used a screen reader or a magnifier or any of the other kind of typical blindness accessible devices before I came here. So I learned how to use JAWS, learned how to use Zoom Text and Fusion, learned how to apply those assistive technology softwares with the Microsoft Office programs and just other basic computer skills using the internet. And so now I'm actually getting the opportunity to teach that same material to other people. And I'm about to further my education by starting a master's program. So that's really quite exciting.
And what's that master's program for?
It's a master's program in special education with a focus in assistive technology and curriculum.
Awesome. And what are you doing with that?
Well, my goal is to eventually take the CADA certification test, so be a certified assistive technology instructional specialist. But it'll also help me in my classroom duties, learning new teaching methods, learning how to build curriculums, to use all types of accessive or assistive technology devices to create specific programs for different people based on what their needs are, and to really be able to assess what they need to be able to be independent, to be able to be employed, or to go forward in their education, and then teach them how to use all the tools that are available to them in order for them to accomplish their goals.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, Amber, what did you learn at World Services for the Blind that has helped you in your job?
Well, I graduated the Microsoft Office Specialist program. So I learned a lot. I don't know where to begin, but I got certified in PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and Outlook. So that just opened so many doors with accessibility. I learned a lot more than I didn't know, as far as like how different programs are done. But outside of World Services, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun when I mention this, but it's kind of coincides. My internship with Accessible 360 is really where I got the knowledge for this particular field, because with Microsoft Microsoft Office, it's solely like dealing with that aspect of it, but this is more web-based. So my internship, I got the knowledge, with HTML, JavaScript, ARIA, and that was more hands-on. But the MOS program definitely did prepare, because I was more confident and I knew my stuff because I used it on a daily basis. So I just needed them to give me a chance, and they did that. And yeah, I just had to show them that I knew it.
Awesome. Yeah. And my next question was going to be about the internship. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So Lee, we're going to jump back to you. What does accessibility, when someone says accessibility, what does that mean to you?
I think when someone talks about accessibility, at least for me, it means giving everyone the ability to access the same sorts of things. So when it comes to web accessibility, just making sure that everyone has access to the same websites and experiences on the web.
Awesome. Heather, what does web accessibility mean to you?
I tend to think of it as leveling the playing field. So accessibility means that it doesn't matter what your disability is, whether it's a visual disability, auditory, possibly even cognitive, mobility, or even some other sort of category of disability, but it means that you don't have to not experience the things that the other 95% of the world's population gets to experience. So it's really just about making everything equally available to all people.
Amber, what does accessibility mean to you?
When I think of accessibility, I think of inclusion. Like, everyone is included, no matter what their disability is, whether it's visual, cognitive, just what Heather just mentioned, all the disabilities. And that's what I do. Like, that's what that is it makes the web accessible for all people with all disabilities. So that's what I think of it is that no one is excluded because of what they can or cannot do.
Right. Yeah. I love all of your answers. And I want to jump back to Heather for a second too. Heather, of course, in your own words, why is accessibility important for people to consider?
I'm sorry, can you say that question again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why is accessibility important for people to consider?
Because when it comes to web accessibility, especially, a lot of what makes a web page accessible is how the developer puts the website together. So if different elements on the page aren't labeled, or it doesn't have an option of using screen reader mode, or you don't put links or regions or headings or anything like that, and when you're first building the website, then really no amount of skills with JAWS is going to make you able to access that page. So accessibility really has to be a consideration on the front end when it comes to web stuff, because that's ultimately where you're going to have to go back to fix it as well.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Lee, since you do a lot of the web design, what are some tips that people could use while they're making their websites, web pages to make them accessible?
Yeah, and I also want to add something to that last question. I think it's really important for people to consider web accessibility because there are so many people in the world who have disabilities. You know, as we've mentioned, we're not only thinking about people with visual disabilities, there's all different kinds and they all need different accessibility needs. So
Exactly.
there's a
Yes.
really untapped market that you're not thinking about if you exclude those with disabilities. And I think it's also a really big misconception that accessibility has to be really complicated and you have to know, really complicated JavaScript and coding, but there's a lot of really simple things you can do to make your websites and social media accessible, especially with social media. It can be something as simple as adding an image description, which is as simple as it sounds. You just describe what is happening in your image, and you want to do that for if it's a photograph or even a meme or anything like that. But as Heather mentioned, when it comes to websites, you want to make sure that your websites have the correct headings. So heading 1 and then heading 2, you don't want to just use, say, a heading 3 at the top of your web page because it's pretty. I think that a lot of people just, they think about things being really aesthetically pleasing, and I think there are very easy ways to do that and still be accessible. So
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. We've got material on our website that Lee creates that to show you how to make websites accessible as well. So check that out if you have a chance.
yeah, we have a few blog posts on making your social media accessible, and even how to make your workplace more accessible for people with disabilities.
So kind of taking a look at careers and accessibility and what that's like. Amber, I know you haven't been in it long, but kind of share a little bit about your advice you would give to someone who's working in the field of accessibility and some things that they can expect.
So working in the field of accessibility, I would say the main thing is to have an open mind and think outside the box, because when creating websites, you may not think, that you can make it accessible, but as we all have said, it's very easy to do, but not everyone has the knowledge to do so. So think outside the box. Think if you yourself had a disability, what would you want to, expect from the website? And then just kind of go into it with that thought process. It's a lot of information, but it's definitely doable. So I would just say have an open mind, think outside the box, and don't limit yourself. Just kind of teach yourself, ask questions, watch YouTube videos. That's what I had to do whenever I watch YouTube videos, read books on HTML. There's just endless content that can, give you insight on how to create accessible content. And of course, you can always start like creating your own website. I tried it and I was like, I don't think I like this. But once I actually got into actually auditing and stuff, it's like, okay, I see how this is doing. I see what this is. I see why this is done, how it's done. So I hope I answered that question. Right.
Yeah. So just to give someone an example, we talked about headings, being accessible. What's another piece of content in a page that you would recommend people looking at to help make their websites accessible?
Regions definitely have regions. For instance, when you have carousels, carousels can be really annoying, especially to people who, one, can't see what's going on, or two, have cognitive disabilities, so they don't really know what, I mean? So if you have the carousel in a region, then as a screen reader, okay, I'm going into this region. I know it's a carousel. I know how to navigate it because it has all that information. And also, if a carousel is constantly rotating, there should be a pause button so that it doesn't make people get dizzy while looking at it. Let's see, regions, headings, lists are good to have, like bulleted lists. Image descriptions are definitely needed.
Right.
And you can do that in several ways. You can add alt text, you can have ARIA labels. There's just so many different things
Oh yeah.
you could do to make it accessible, but those are definitely just among the few important ones, more common ones too.
Right.
So
Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, no, that helps a lot, because our goal is to share with you guys just some places to start and kind of our perspective. So Heather, kind of the same question. What's some advice you would give to someone who wants to work in the field of assistive technology instruction? And what have you learned?
Well, my advice would be similar to what Amber said about keeping an open mind and just not assuming that everything has to be done a very specific way. It's kind of interesting when I'm teaching students who are new to using screen readers, and I have to tell them, there's 3 or 4 ways to do everything that you're about to do. But if you're wanting to work in accessibility, you need to know all of that so that you can take your skills and use them at the moments that you really need them. And I think that's especially important when it comes to accessing the web. The people who are the best at accessing the web, especially when you're dealing with sites that are potentially inaccessible, is just having really, really solid skills with your screen reader and magnification hardware or software. But it's not something that gets learned overnight. So I also advise people to have some grace with yourself and some patience when you're trying to learn these skills, especially for someone who has been totally blind for their entire life and doesn't have any point of reference for what a web page looks like, or when someone says go to the top or the bottom of the page or cycle through some slides or something like that. If you don't have an accessible website, that can be really, really difficult. So it does take having some skills, and my biggest advice would be to learn the skills, but be patient with yourself in the process. It'll come.
I love that. That's great.
Yes.
Cool. So Lee, I'm going to kind of kick this one back to you also. Someone who's working in communications, especially on the web development side, what's some advice you would give to someone? Lee?
Sorry, I was muted. But I'm really going to echo what Heather and Amber were saying, that you really just have to try things out. A lot of ways that I learned HTML and basic web design, we're taking some continuing education courses. There's a lot of places you can do those even for free, like online, like Udemy or anything like that. And I think it's just trying things out. And Amber brought up a really good point of creating your own website. And it can be something as simple as just making a free WordPress website just to try things out and just to see what works and what doesn't. And I also think it's important if you want to get into web accessibility, and if you're not a person with a disability, and even if you are, just talking to other people with disabilities and what they need and what they find the most helpful.
Right. Cool. Well, thanks all of you guys for sharing your tips and advice. We do want to open it up for questions on Facebook. And if you guys watch this later and it's not live, we will be watching the comments. So feel free to ask those, even if it's not live, we'll get back to you. If you have any questions or you're interested in programs, email training@wsblind.org. Just reminding you guys, we do have an assistive technology instructor program here on campus and online. So if you're interested in something like that, let us know. And you can read more about that program at wsblind.org under programs and services, and then click career training. And then we have another program, web accessibility professional, that's in the works at the moment. So be sure you subscribe to our newsletter, and we will be sharing more information about that as probably later in the fall. So just if that's something you're interested in, there's definitely potential work from home with that position. Amber can attest to that one, I'm sure.
Yes.
And that one is, I know a lot of you guys who are visually impaired, blind and visually impaired, who use screen reading software. You've got those skills already. We want to take that, the skills you have already, and help you find a job with what you're interested in. And a lot of people, they know that they've got good JAWS, Zoom text, or NVDA or other assistive tech skills. So that's a program we're really excited about. Again, that's our web accessibility professional program that we'll be revealing in the fall. So subscribe to our newsletter, check that out. Lee, do we have any questions on Facebook at the moment?
Let me see. We do not.
No problem. So again, like I said, just you guys post questions in the comments and we'll be getting back to you. Thanks all of you who have joined. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you all soon. So take care and have a good one.